about the first time I interviewed you, and I couldn't come up with it, but I'm sure it was a Ratchet on the PlayStation 2, probably, or maybe Resistance.
Yeah, we go back a long way.
Yes, but it is good to talk to you again on stage. You are celebrating your 25th anniversary at Insomniac.
We are. Yeah, it's been a good 25 years. We've been lucky, and we've been growing very slowly over the last 25 years. But culture, I know we want to talk a little bit about culture today, but culture is really what has been I'd say the biggest challenge and probably the best thing about the last 25 years is helping grow the culture and define it.
So what was the culture like when you started it?
So
was there a culture at that point?
So we were, I mean, I'll just to give you the perspective, we're close to 300 people right now at Insomniac in 2 different locations. And back in 1994, we were literally a garage developer. It started with me just in a 10 by 10 room, and then I was fortunate to run into 2 very talented programmers, Al and Brian Hastings, who joined, and our room got a little bit bigger. And we were all wearing multiple hats, doing whatever we could to figure out how to make games. And when we came up with the demo for our first game, we were literally driving up and down the coast in my Saturn, knocking on every publisher's door we could find. And I think, Phil, I don't know if we talked back then. No, maybe not.
96.
That was 96. Okay, that's right. 96, you came down. And this is actually after we had done our first deal with Universal Interactive. I got to meet Phil. But prior to that, we were getting thrown out of every single publisher's office because they looked at us and they said, "You guys have no experience. You don't know how to make games. And this game, by the way, this game you're doing isn't particularly appealing to us."
What was the demo?
It was a first-person shooter demo. So Al Hastings, who's our chief architect, had written an engine in a month, a first-person shooter engine. It was brilliant. The guy's a wizard. And we recorded it onto a VHS tape, and it had some really crappy animation that I did. And that was sort of the genesis of our first game, Disruptor, which probably nobody here in the room even knows about. But it was, oh, yes, right. Thank you. All right, my buddy's in the back. It was called the best game nobody's heard of by one reviewer, which was, it was high praise. It didn't really matter for us back then. We just wanted to be able to ship something and prove that we could actually make games with a tiny, tiny team.
So you got some traction with your demo. Got a little traction. Enough traction. You got enough traction with your demo.
We got enough traction to sign a 3-game deal with Universal Interactive. And that got us over the hump. We were able to ship a game, and then came Spyro, which was our attempt to do something different. And actually, Spyro had a lot to do with the culture at Insomniac, because at the time, we'd made this sort of dark game. It was unintentionally comic. We didn't mean to make it cheesy and funny, but it kind of was. But it definitely it was a first-person shooter that had sort of dark overtones, and we wanted to do something that was a little bit more lighthearted, because that's sort of who we were. And Mark Cerny at the time, who we were also working with, who was our producer at Universal, said, "Why don't you guys consider something that's more family-friendly? Nintendo's got a lock on the market. PlayStation doesn't have any games currently that are really attractive to a broader audience." And one of our artists said, "I've always wanted to make a game about a dragon." And as soon as he said that, we all realized that, okay, this is more along the lines of who we are as creators. We all grew up reading fantasy novels and loving the sort of the pastoral landscapes we all had in our heads when playing D&D and thinking about all of these books and movies we had seen. So Spyro became a reality, and it became a very broadly appealing game because we wanted to make something that wasn't dark and that didn't have sort of aggressive overtones.
So when you are now, so you started out with sort of 3 people, the garage, that's the origin story. How did you start hiring people and ramping up for Disruptor and for Spyro?
Probably the same way you guys did. We just talked to everybody we could, everybody we knew in the industry, and asked, do you know a great programmer? Do you know a great artist? Do you know a great animator who might be interested in joining this fledgling team? And we put ads out wherever we could. I think back then, I mean, when we started, the internet was pretty non-existent. So I think we actually ran ads in papers as well. So we did whatever we could.
Papers, that is amazing. I love that. But then, so when you're hiring, you're doing craft assessments, or you're doing some type of personality or culture fit assessments at all, or you
Nope.
got lucky with the people that you found?
No, we didn't get lucky either. I mean,
Okay.
I think a lot of people, this is probably what a lot of us experience when you have that moment when somebody comes in and is interested in a position, and you have half an hour maybe to figure out if that person is culturally a great fit. And back then we didn't know what questions to ask, right? We were more focused on the technical aspects. Take this programming test or show us your art portfolio. Instead of asking, what has your experience working with teams been like? What are you interested in? What do you do for fun? Like, how would you deal with a situation where you have to tell somebody that their stuff isn't good enough? How would you approach that? How do you take criticism? And we didn't learn any of that. And so as a result, I think we had some great team members join, and we had some folks who just didn't fit. And it took us a while to figure out what that fit really was.
And to figure out if somebody is really kind of jiving with people and fitting in and having sort of a positive impact that you want on the team and also on the games. Do you think you have to define that first, or is it just sort of this essence and feeling that you have?
That's a great question. Well, I'm going to fire back at you, just to be sort of lazy about it. What do you do?
Okay, so at Bonfire, we started with the idea of culture, values. We always try to start with the idea, start with the why. So we do craft assessments because we're all very excellence oriented and a little crazy at Bonfire in the best possible way. We're passionate, I think is probably the better word. But we also want to make sure that we find those good people that are going to have a really positive impact on our community and our game. So we have a huge part of our interviews is around our values, and we ask those questions, those same questions you were just talking about. Tell me about a time when you let your team down. How did you repair that relationship? What would you have done differently? And you ask about specific scenarios and kind of learn about the way the person thinks. And what we're really looking for is that they are going to treat everybody else with respect, that they're going to listen to their coworkers, that they're going to forgive when they've been slighted. Certain things like that. I think that the craft assessments are almost easy.
So to me, those sound completely natural questions, and those are the kind of questions you would want to ask somebody who's going to be your roommate, right?
Yeah.
If you are looking for roommates, but we haven't been asking them in our industry. I don't think as much. So what has changed, I guess, about your thinking and about Bonfire's thinking, about just developers in general, that allows us to now ask those questions more comfortably?
I think it's a little bit. Just when you started Insomniac, I don't think it was in the air and the water, this idea of having an overarching purpose. When we started Bonfire, everybody was talking about it. People have a lot of options, and we're not going to be able to attract amazing talent if we don't provide them a great experience to work in and give them that creative freedom that they want, and sort of a freedom from bureaucracy as much as possible, and make them feel like they're really having an impact.
I think it's a great point. It is unbelievably competitive right now when it comes to finding great folks.
We can't pay Google salaries.
Right.
So.
So you have to offer something that's different, right? You have to put your culture on a pedestal and say, this is why we are different. Maybe we can't pay you the same salary as a giant company, but we can give you something that you've been looking for.
Yeah. Right,
potentially. And we do find a lot of folks who come from larger companies who are looking for something different about the culture, something that feels more of a fit, like a fit for them, something where, and I'll use what Dean said earlier this morning, a way that they can impact people, right? And if you can show them that what you're doing as a developer does have an impact on people's lives, then that is special. That can be a real attractor.
Yeah, we all have different value propositions, really. I know I sound like a marketing person right now, but yours is going to be different than Bonfire's. We're much smaller, which is going to be different than Google, and a different person is going to thrive in each of those environments. So we just got to sort of do that magic of finding the right person for each little spot. But I do want to, I know you keep trying to get it about Bonfire, but this is about Insomniac. I do want to talk about your path and journey to creating values and a mission.
Sure.
At what point did you start thinking about it? Because this kind of relates back to what we were talking about, how it's in the air now.
Well, I think part of being an independent developer and just having a team of any kind is understanding what the team stands for, right? And what are we all going for? And I think early on we would use words, just words, throw them out there and we would say we're collaborative, we're innovative, we're efficient, we treat each other with respect. But it was sort of a laundry list of stuff. And a few years ago, our chief brand officer, Ryan Schneider, said, you know what, we don't have a vision, do we? And I said, well, we make great games, but that's sort of been what we wanted to do. And he said, no, we don't have a vision that we can all get behind and use it to make decisions about our games or about what we're doing as a company. And who are we? What do we want to be? And at that point, we started across the company brainstorming about who it is we wanted to be. What are we saying with our culture? What are we saying with our games to our players, and is it consistent? And so I proposed a vision, and it totally fell flat. I was thinking super aggressive, alpha, let's be awesome. We need to be the best developer in the world, right? That was our vision, to be the best developer in the world. And everybody sort of looked at me like, all right, kind of get it. What do you mean? Are you talking about Metacritic? Or are you talking, I mean, we have a very, like most developers, we're all analysts, right? So we're all thinking, everybody was coming to me and saying, specifically, how is this going to help me make decisions about the game we're making?
Right, and it also, I find it a little funny because it's just not how I think about Insomniac. And it's not how I think about the people that I know over there.
Yeah.
They're not the sort of
okay, so we're not out there
world dominated.
But we do. There's a
people.
drive. This is a super competitive industry, right? Most of us who are developers are friends, and we share techniques and stories, and we try to help each other. But at the same time, it is to succeed in this industry, you have to be hard charging. So at least that was my mentality at the time. And I was thinking, okay, I want everybody to get excited about this and just go for it with every single thing we do. And it just fell flat. And I would ask people, what's our vision? I got up in front of the company and gave this presentation, and here's how it works. And people, would sort of stare at me blankly later, and they go, I think it had something to do with being the best. I don't know what it was. And
if somebody can't repeat it to you, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, right. So I had to admit to everybody that, okay, this isn't working, guys. I think I made a mistake. I've asked a bunch of you, and nobody really had a great response. So clearly you're saying you don't like it, and this is not us. And it took a sort of a singular experience for me to understand that I was going down the wrong path completely. And I wasn't thinking about the impact that our games have on people. And a few years ago, Brian Hastings, who's our chief creative strategist, and I were in San Antonio, Texas. And we were at a small conference, and we were promoting one of our very small games called Song of the Deep, which we had done, we were making with GameStop. And we were signing posters. And there was a cool setup, and there was a line of, surprisingly, about 100 people to sign posters for this little game, for us to sign posters for them. So I walked up and down the line before we started signing posters, and I was just talking to people. Got back, sat down, I was signing, and I was waiting for the next person to come over, and it was a woman who stopped, and she was crying. And she was crying, she was clearly upset about something. And I said, oh my God, did I say something obnoxious to you in line? Did I offend you? And she said, no, I just wanted to let you know that Insomniac saved my life. And I said, really? And she told me that she'd been clinically depressed all of her life. And a few years ago, she had made the decision to take her life. She was going to commit suicide. And she had let a couple of her friends know that this was sort of a fait accompli. And one of her friends said to her, before you do, you need to play this game. And she literally got a copy of Ratchet & Clank. And this person said, play this game and then we'll talk. And she played it, and she said, I realized that my friend was trying to tell me that what really mattered was our friendship, and not just what my friends meant to me, but what I meant to them. And that, I mean, both Brian and I were sort of in tears, because it really, that was what we were trying to get across with that game, was just the deep friendship that persists through all the ups and downs of one's life. And she had been so impacted by it that it was a life changer for her. And I was able to take that experience and realize that, okay, what we are all about is not being the best and selling the most games. It is about the positive and lasting impact that we have on people's lives through the stories we tell, through the characters we make. And I came back to Insomniac, and we all started talking about this experience. And it turned out that a lot of other Insomniacs had similar experiences, where people would come up to them and say, hey, I played Spyro with my little brother, and it strengthened our relationship. Or I just have to tell one more story. Another person I met told me that he had met this wonderful woman online playing Resistance Online.
Yeah.
And he proposed to her. He invited me to his wedding, and I went to the wedding. And they brought out the wedding cake, and on top of the cake, instead of a bride and a groom, were 2 of our alien action figures from Resistance. And again, it just sort of drove home the fact that all of us who develop games sometimes forget about the incredible impact that the things we do have on people outside of our sphere. So I changed what our vision was, and it is, Insomniac's vision is to create a lasting and positive impact on people's lives. Not just gamers, but for Insomniacs as well, who come to Insomniac and want something different, a way to express themselves and be part of a team where collaboration is everything, and transparency is key.
And now, I mean, that's more of a mission that the people who are coming up with ideas and creating games, like they can think about that as a way to understand what they should be making or help guide them.
Exactly, and I feel like when you are faced with a design challenge, right, and you're asking, or story challenge, if you can ask, how is this going to make a positive impact on people? It's a very hard question to answer, especially when you're getting into the mechanics of game design or combat, right? But we've done our best to use that as much as we can in our most recent games.
So that's sort of your overarching purpose, mission. You call it your mission statement?
That's a vision statement.
That's your vision
and we also have a mission, and I don't want to get too.
I know we only have a few minutes left, and I know you're not necessarily sort of talking about them publicly. We're not talking about our values publicly currently, but can you give us sort of an example of what one of the statements might look like, so they're not the one-word statements; those weren't working. You said. Yeah.
Well, we decided to have one vision statement and then a bunch of 7 points under a mission, which sounds really analytical, but I mean, I'll just give you an example. One of our mission statements is to create stories that inspire players with stories of underdogs overcoming colossal challenges. And we look back on all the games we've done, and all of our stories, for the most part, have been about underdogs overcoming colossal challenges. And I think when we started asking, well, why? That's the way we see ourselves in this industry. We've always viewed ourselves as sort of the scrappy, independent developer fighting against much larger teams and having to break through with innovation and just taking a different approach to solving problems.
So efficiency wasn't a value that really inspired people?
I really wanted it to be I wanted to say, guys, it's all about efficiency. Come on, if we can just do this faster. No, that didn't work.
It didn't really hit?
No.
It didn't really resonate with people?
No.
Do you see them changing ever, or do you feel like they're pretty representative?
The ones that we have feel very, I think, near and dear to Insomniac. They really do reflect who we are. I mean, we talk about giving back. We talk about craftsmanship. We talk about being leaders in the game development community. We talk about inspiring each other through a community of collaboration. And we talk about creating games with broad appeal. So those are all parts of our mission statement that are very true to who we have been over the last 25 years and who we are today and where I think we're going.
So we only have 2 minutes left, so we can't sort of dive into anything super deeply.
What about your vision statement? Come on, you've been asking me.
Okay, so I mean, our purpose is, so I'm gonna have to talk fast, sorry everyone. So the way we sort of crafted our purpose and our mission and our values was that we went to an offsite and we got a lot of Post-it notes and we put what was really important to each of us. We broke them down into categories, and really the most important thing to all of us was this idea of friendship. And it has a lot of ideas in it, that idea of mutual respect, that idea of trying to listen to each other and understanding that we're all different and our differences are what make us stronger. But for that sort of core idea was friendship that was the most important thing. And like we wanted to get through all of these trials and tribulations, and we're gonna go through I'm sure some really hard times together. And if we have a strong enough friendship, we're gonna come out as friends 20 years down the line. So that was a really core part of who we were as a group. And so it's like our purpose is to build friendships and create friendships, and it's not just related to us, but it's also to our players and to help create a community where people can be respectful of each other and positive community. So it's about building friendships between our gamers and our community, and also between ourselves.
That's authentic. I think that's what makes those types of statements work, when they feel true, right, to who you are.
Yeah. So, and also just friends to other developers and people in the, in our own community. So we're trying to fulfill that purpose. We're still early in our mission, but wish us luck.
Awesome.
Okay, 11 seconds early. I feel like we should get a prize.
All right.
Right on time.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
very much for
Okay.
coming, listening to us.